Hi, my name's Nicole. Welcome back to my channel. I'm a homeschooling mom with two kids at home. I have a daughter who's 10, who's in 5th grade now, and I have a son who's 3, almost 4, but I'm not formally homeschooling him yet. Today I'm going to talk to you about one of my favorite curriculums ever, MosDos Press Literature, specifically the Ruby edition, which is technically 4th grade. When I found MosDos, you guys, it was a breath of fresh air. You guys, this curriculum is fun, engaging, and it's so relatable for kids. On top of that, I don't know if you saw my last video, but in it I talk a lot about how mental health education is really important to me. And I honestly feel like MosDos has a lot of components that are mental health related. I mean, it teaches kids through stories to persevere through challenges. It teaches them work ethic and the value and importance of that. It teaches them to have integrity even when they're getting peer pressures. I mean, these are pretty important things for kids to learn, and I just love it. On top of all of that, it teaches what it's made for, to teach literary elements, reading comprehension, some vocabulary, and even writing. This is a great curriculum, you guys. So I'm going to turn the camera around and go over this with you, and then when I'm done with that, I'll go over and review how we used it last year and how we're using it this year. All right, guys, let's go over the Ruby student textbook and the student activity workbook. This does also come with 2 hefty teacher guides. However, I use them and I didn't feel that I needed them. They just delved deeper into comprehension, and I felt like what was contained in these 2 was more than enough. Like, we don't even get through everything that's here. And those 2 teacher guides are $80. So I resold those. I got this very used copy for 20 bucks on eBay. In full disclosure, I didn't actually see pictures of what it looked like. It was a lot more used than I thought it would be, but you can get a pretty decent copy on eBay for $25, $30. That's how much I got my Coral edition, which is the next level after this Ruby, and it's pretty much brand new. This student activity workbook, I did buy used. However, if I couldn't find it used, I would have bought it new for $24 because I do think it's worth it. So I'm going to start with the student textbook. So how it starts, see, again, very used, please excuse. Okay, so we have 6 units and a poetry unit. These are kind of how they look. So for example, this is unit 2. Each lesson begins with something called lesson in literature. On this side, you have the literary element that it's discussing. In this case, it's eternal conflict. It gives you some questions to think about before the story. It gives you some questions after the story. Sometimes it gives you a short little assignment to use with the story. And then it's usually just this one page. And then the next component is the main large story. They always have this blueprint for reading, or it's something you read to your kids. It goes deeper on that literary element. And then the stories are quite long, but honestly, a lot of it is illustrations. And the pictures in this book are just beautiful and so appealing to the eye. And they're different, all different sorts of pictures, photographs, paintings, drawings. And at the end of each story, it'll always talk about the author that wrote that particular story. And at the end of every story, you have a poem. And then you have this section, studying the selection. You have a first impression question, quick review. This is more your reading comprehension, a focus to go a little deeper, and creative and writing options just within this book. So you could literally just use the student textbook if you wanted, and you would be fine. That particular lesson did not have a Jill's journal, so I flipped to a Jill's journal. Most lessons have Jill's journal following the large story. This is Jill. She's a journalist, and she's talking about a topic that relates to the 2 stories that we read before. And at the end of Jill's journal, there's always a power skill activity that you can do that's also really nice. Another really cool feature of this curriculum is at the end of each unit, you have what's called a wrap-up. And it'll show the pictures of all the 5 stories that were included within this unit. And it gives you 4 different cool and unique activities to do related to this. In this case right here, you're making a greeting card for one of the characters that was in the story. In this one, you're writing a poem that's regarding one of the characters. And here you're making a review board. Activity 4 is writing an essay about a moment of clarity in. And again, it goes back to the stories that were written. Each wrap up is different, and then you go on to your new unit. I absolutely love the unit wrap-ups. If there's anything I think about fondly from my public school days, that would be those type of projects that are included in the unit wrap-up. So in the student activity workbook, they have workbook pages that go along with each of the larger stories from each of the lessons. There isn't any workbook pages in the activity workbook that go along with the first short story from the lesson in literature or anything regarding Jill's journal, just to keep that in mind. Also, no two workbook pages that correspond with each lesson are the same. For example, in this lesson, it begins with a page of vocabulary, 2 pages actually. So these comprehension questions I feel are the meat of this workbook. Every single large story has comprehension questions in the workbook that corresponds with it. It goes with in-depth thinking, drawing conclusion, and one step further, which is always some writing project. In-depth thinking, for example, Suku and Toto had learned many lessons from their parents. What lessons helped them on the day they met? Drawing conclusions. Do you think Suku was brave? Why or why not? Do you think Suku thought of himself as brave? And on this one step further, it says, think about the above quotes. Your teacher will discuss them briefly with the class and then ask you to express in writing whether you agree or disagree with what they state. The quotes are, if you don't risk anything, you risk even more. Only those who will risk going too far can possibly find out how far one can go. Then sometimes they will also come with graphic organizers. In this one, they're doing a compare and contrast question using a Venn diagram. The next story, however, you notice has no vocabulary, just these comprehension questions with the same format. In-depth thinking, drawing conclusions, one step further, but it does have a graphic organizer here. And the next story, this one does have vocabulary. In fact, this one has 2 pages of vocabulary. And then the comprehension questions, the same format as the previous 2. And then here we have a graphic organizer. Next one begins with vocabulary, comprehension questions, and then this one also has a graphic organizer. So that is the workbook. This is most definitely worth it in my opinion. All right, guys, now I'm going to talk about how I've used this curriculum. So last year I started this curriculum halfway through the year, and I was really trying to do a Charlotte Mason philosophy last year. So how I used this program was I would have Emma narrate the short story and we would talk about the literary elements. Then on the second story, which was larger, I would have her either narrate the whole thing or I would break it up into parts and have her do it. And then as far as the questions went, I wouldn't ask her the reading comprehensions like, what color's hat is Jack wearing? It would be more Socratic questions, deeper questions. What would you do in this situation? How did you feel about this? But I'm going to be honest, Emma hated it. Hated it. She hates narrating. She just hates it. She's great at it, but it was such a fight. I finally had to let go of narrating, which was really hard. But I'm so glad that I did, because once I changed the way I did this, it's made all the difference, and she loves this now. So what we'll do is either I'll read to her or she'll read to me. I feel like they both have great benefits. And then we'll go over the questions and we'll talk about it orally. Sometimes I won't even have her write the questions, because honestly, I feel like her answers are so much more in depth when she doesn't have to write them. So we'll go over all of it, and we have the greatest discussions. Her level of comprehension of what they're trying to say, the morals they're trying to teach, is just amazing. We've had some of the most incredible conversations about the topics. So if you're looking for a curriculum that not only has literary elements, vocabulary, reading comprehension, writing, but you also want to have these awesome discussions with your kids about morals and trials and tribulations that they're going to be facing in their future and how to face them, this is a curriculum for you. All right, well, I would love to hear from you guys in the comments. Have you guys used MosDos? How did you like it? Have you thought about it? Or even better yet, what literature program are you using now? Do you like it? How do you feel about it? I love talking about this stuff, guys. So I would love to talk to you in the comments. All right, thank you so much for watching my channel. I'll see you next time.